Well, though the show had a surprise renewal, that does not mean that the show is doing anything the same as it did last year. Hey guys, it's coming out for the season premiere of Scream Queens, Season 2, Episode 1, Scream Again, and I really did not know what to think of this episode going into it. As you guys know, I started off not loving Scream Queens last year, but as it went on, I think it got better and better. But I really didn't know what they were going to do in Season 2. In fact, I didn't know if we were getting a Season 2. The way it left off in Season 1, I think it could have just ended there. So I really didn't know what was going to happen in Season 2, where we're headed. But then we were renewed for Season 2. I'm like, okay, but I don't really know where they're going with this. I thought it was going to be a summer camp, because I remember hearing Ryan Murphy said that's what they were going to do. But ultimately, they did the complete opposite of that, and I have to say that overall, this was a really promising premiere. I definitely really love this overall. I think the show is going to be a lot better than Season 1. It's a lot funnier, and even a little bit scary, I have to say. I really was impressed by this. Basically, the best way to explain this premiere without going into it first is that they took all the great elements of Season 1, annexed all the stuff that people complained about, and they kept in all the characters that people liked, and basically set up an entire new show to the point where I think if you haven't seen Season 1, you're good with this season. Honestly, jump into this season because it's going to be way different, but let's just get right into it because I really do want to talk about it. I love the way this episode starts because already you can tell the tone is very different. We're at this Halloween party at a hospital, and this pregnant wife is come in search of someone to help her husband, and I love how everyone's saying, oh, it's Halloween, who cares, nothing's really going on, because again, when Halloween happens, I mean, people look like they're bloody and shit all the time, so Bill, the husband, needs his lungs drained, and instead of helping out so basically he needs his lungs drained very urgently. The wife wants to do whatever she can to help out her husband. It's a very interesting scene because you don't really know what's going to happen here, and like I said, the doctor and nurse are kind of joking about the entire thing, and, instead of helping out, they take him to a swamp, they dump his body, and they disguise the patient's body in the doctor's green cape and green monster mask, and there's definitely some sort of killer or something going on there, but I thought that was a great way to kind of be an homage to Season 1 in the way that they, showed us this hospital. But the hospital definitely is a lot different than Kappa Kappa Tau. There's definitely some weird going on at the hospital, and it right away shows us that all is not right at this hospital, definitely. So I thought that was a very good way to start things off. I really did love that, and I really do love that we even have a new intro. I mean, yeah, it's very short, but we even have a new intro, and we then cut to 2016, which I thought this was going to be a few years after Season 1, so I don't know why it's 2016. I don't know when Season 1 took place exactly, but kind of strange we went abruptly to 2016. So we meet the two new characters of Dr. Cassidy Cascade and Dr. Brock Holt, played by Taylor Lautner and John Stamos. We don't find out a ton about Taylor Lautner in this episode, but we do get into John Stamos' character a lot, which we'll get into. But they're checking out on this patient who has severe werewolf syndrome, which I love how this season is just like fuck realisticness, and it's going completely out there and very bizarre, because honestly, for a show like this, it needs to do that. I've talked about Scream Queens before. Scream Queens is best when it doesn't take itself so seriously, and when it basically isn't realistic, when it's just silly, and I think that's something that they did very well in this episode. A lot of outrageous stuff here, but it made a lot of sense. So Munsch arrives, she's already spewing lies, going about all this bullshit that, basically the incurable are cured, and obviously everyone's very confused. So she narrates her journey into becoming a doctor and how she became a doctor and everything. And you guys know I wasn't a huge fan of Munsch last season, but I already like what they're doing with her this season, because Munsch is in a much different role. The role I thought Munsch was going to play last season, she's playing a lot more this season, because she's one of the titular characters of this season. It doesn't seem like she's going through any, weird stuff. Basically, she narrates her journey to becoming a doctor. We find out that after writing her book, she found herself actually at a loss for words. And I love the way that she had that, press conference a la kind of like Steve Jobs. I thought that was definitely very interesting. And, she realized that she had done it all, but then became inspired to help cure, which I can't remember what cure stood for, but she wanted to help go into the medical business. And a woman in the audience asked what happened to the Chanels, and I love that the Chanels are back in the season, because, let's face it, you couldn't have Scream Queens without the Chanels. They're one of the best parts of last season by far. And Munsch tells her shortly after they were convicted, a Netflix documentary was made about them, a la Making a Murderer, and the Chanels are on trial, but Denise, the police officer, brings in a recording of Hester admitting to being the killer, so they know that Hester is the killer. And I like that that quickly ended, because obviously I thought that Hester was going to be on the run, but in this episode we don't know where Hester is. We don't know if she's behind bars, we don't know, and I think it's going to take a little while for us to find out where she is. I'm glad she's back, though, because Lea Michele does such a great job as that character. So, Munsch goes to Zayday with a deal, we see, that she'll, and here's the thing I really do love, is that having Zayday, here, you know, last season I did like Zayday, but I felt like the problem was Grace, really. As you know, I really was not a fan of Grace last season. I thought that she was just way too plain and really not interesting, but having Zayday without Grace is a very good move, because Zayday is what what Grace was supposed to be last season, and that is really like the good normal one. That's what Zayday is this season. I already really do like what they've done with Zayday, because Grace was just boring, but Keke Palmer actually brings some life to Zayday, and that's something I definitely am happy to see. I'm glad they got rid of Zayday, and I'm glad they got rid of Grace, because she by far was one of the worst parts of last season. So I thought that that actually worked out very well, and I was happy to see that. But Munsch decided to go to her with a deal. She'll pay for Zayday to go to med school as long as she works there. And Munsch says she has a deep personal reason for wanting this hospital to succeed, and whether she sees her or not, she sees her as an integral part of its success. That it's not going to work unless Zayday is on board. So I already like that these two are bonding. I like that they have this, that they're taking her in this different direction, and I like seeing that. And I think Zayday already is a little bit more likable of a character. Not that I didn't like Zayday last year, I just found her to be a little bit too cliche, black, teenager cliche, and she's a little bit different this season. I like that. So Dr. Holt is showing Zayday around, and he's already saying some pretty shady stuff. Right away, he's talking to her about how he just likes to start cutting, and I really do not trust Dr. Holt, I have to say. John Stamos is doing a great job as this character, let me just say that right off the bat. I really love this character in this episode, but something about him is very, very sketchy, and I can't figure out what it is. But she's introduced to Dr. Cassidy, who quickly says he's not looking for a girlfriend, and Holt reveals that he's the first recipient of a hand transplant, and we find out that he lost it at a Super Bowl party when his friend flipped the switch to the garbage disposal the moment the power went on, which, hilarious scene. I mean, darkly humorous, but I've said it before, the show nails it at dark humor, and that was a great example of that. So we find he also went to Harvard, and Holt tells her that in 2 years he suffered as he watched other lesser surgeons do his job, because he basically was the guy that was brought in when there was no one else around. But he was someone who did do a good job at surgeries, and it broke his heart because he knew he could still do it, and it's why he owes Munsch such so much for finding him and giving him a second chance, which he sees as the last option he has left. And honestly, I think they did a really good job with getting us to like Dr. Holt, because even though he is very shady, you kind of feel bad for him. I mean, obviously, like I said, he lost his hand, and I thought they did a really good job with setting up his backstory, and I really thought that was interesting where that's going. So I really like Dr. Holt so far as a character. And as they're leaving, Zayday puts her hand on Cassidy's shoulder. To her surprise, he's as cold as ice, except he won't melt. So there's definitely more going on with Cassidy. We don't know what that is, and we don't know what that whole situation's about, why his heart won't melt, and why it's just cold as ice. We don't really know. But there's definitely more going on than we think. I'm sure we're going to find out more about Cassidy in the next episode, but like I said, he's the one character in this episode that we don't really know much about. He's really a blank slate, as well as one other character, but Zayday then promises the werewolf patient Catherine that they will have a cure in a week, and Holt feels that there's nothing they can do, but she tells him that they have to just try harder. And I like that Zayday is really kind of, she has all this perseverance, and she just has tons of, she's definitely very hopeful, while everyone else is kind of hopeless. And Cassidy says it's a chromosomal level that would be like making your eyes blue, and Catherine says is starting to lose hope, and we're then introduced to Candy Striper, aka Chamberlain Jackson, who, yes, he is played by James Earl, who, if you don't know who that is, yes, that is, he did play a Zemo on Glee. Great to see him back. I always loved him on Glee, and it's great to see him back here. He says he's there to cheer her up, and Holt says that he can't just barge into a room like this, and Candy says it was part of the job he signed up for. He shows her 2 razors, and she obviously feels humiliated, and you can tell this is a hospital where they're not really helping them. They're kind of just making fun of them, and Zayday says to give them 1 week to find a cure, and she's going to do what she can to do this. She actually is taking this seriously, and Zayday is really who they need, because when you have a hospital full of idiots, idiots, Zayday really is someone that they do need because she actually does want to help them, and she actually does feel like they can do something here. Also, the scene where Holt was sending that text, I thought was hilarious. I really love that. So she goes to visit Munsch to demand more females on staff because she feels like she's kind of out of place. I mean, she's the only female working there. She wants more. And Munsch feels this finally time to reveal the Chanels. Basically, we get this great monologue, which Emma Roberts, it was great to see her back as this character. I forgot how great she was as this character, but she just killed it in this monologue. We find out that their public images have been completely tarnished, and they're living the broke life, and Chanel gets the idea to start giving back, basically. Number 5, we find out gets a job at a receptionist at a dentist's office, which they actually did decide to graduate college, which I thought was interesting to see. So, number 5 gets a job as a receptionist at a dentist's office. Number 3 mops floors, and Chanel draws blood, which I love Chanel's little... I realized that I love blood. I thought that was really funny, but they still feel like has-beens. They feel like they're just a thing of the past, and that their reputation is just over, and that no one wants anything to do with them. So Munsch then pulls up to their house in her limo, and she gets them to enroll in medical school so they can work at the hospital, basically, and she basically gives them this deal that she's going to give them what they want, and that they're going to be able to work at the hospital, which... Obviously, they don't really have much experience, but you understand why Munsch wants to do this for them. She kind of wants to turn their life around. They see this as a good opportunity for them, and I thought it was an interesting direction to take their characters in. And let me just say that I really love seeing the Chanels back. I think they work very well here. I think they're definitely some of the best parts of this first episode. And I remember, how I felt about the Chanels last season. And already, I mean, they did great stuff with the Chanels at the end of last season. It definitely seems like this season they're a lot less focused on insults and a lot more focused on how do we make these characters fun and interesting. And they definitely did a very good job with that here. So Zayday's then doing laundry when this monster emerged from the end of the dark hallway, and it's the Chanels ready for the first day of work, and at first she's outraged since they're not really medical students and they haven't had to work for it, because she has. Zayday actually did go to medical school. Zayday actually did want to become a doctor. She's not just someone who is broke and they're just doing this because Munsch told them to. Zayday actually had to work for it, and I like this rivalry between Zayday and the Chanels. We did have this last season, but because of Zayday and Grace, it never really was brought to the forefront, and this season it seems like it is, and I really do like seeing that. So she hugs them and says she's glad that they are there, and it's going to be so much fun working with other women, because now she feels like she's actually comfortable. Before, she felt like she was kind of outnumbered, but now she feels like she belongs there, and I like seeing that. So we go to the first stop, which is actually the locker room, and Chanel refused to wear disposable clothing, but then she sees Holt taking a shower with the curtain open. You can tell that Chanel obviously finds him very attractive, and this gets Chanel on board immediately. However, number 5 notices this really creepy tattoo on his back, and we don't know what it is, but there's something weird going on with Holt. Like I said, I really do not trust him, just something about him, and I really do not trust Holt. And unlike Munsch, though, last season, you're not really supposed to trust Holt, and I like seeing that. So Munsch makes the Chanels ghost the doctors, which they agree to do, but not before arguing what ghosting actually is, which Munch's form of ghosting, let me just say, that's not actually what ghosting means. Ghosting actually means to ignore someone, to pretend they don't exist. That's what ghosting is. Like, say you're in, like, high school, and someone, say you're in high school, and there's this person that you're friends with, and they did something you're not happy with, that's, you just ignore them, that's ghosting them. What Munsch says is not actually ghosting, she thinks that it's to stay silent and say nothing, though it's not actually ghosting. I thought that was actually pretty funny to see, and this is something I really do like about Munch's characters. When she oozes out this trying to be modern and trying to be cool and everything, that's the Munch that I definitely like seeing. I thought that was funny to see here, and I definitely enjoyed that. So Zayday then speaking to Catherine about her only possible cure, which is a lobotomy, and number 5 then cuts in, so they make a description of the patient's shower drain, and it's only to help her throw up, and we meet Ingrid, the head nurse, played by Kirstie Alley, and I like this character was very much kept under wraps. We didn't know what this character was going to do. We didn't know what role she was going to play. I already really like her character, though, because she's the one that's there to give the Chanels a reality check. And we really didn't have that character last season. Munch was supposed to be that last season, but they did so much weird shit with her that just never really worked. And I like that the character of Ingrid is someone who doesn't, it's just not playing any games. She's a no-nonsense doctor, and she actually takes this seriously. She makes it clear she doesn't like the Chanels, feels that Munsch only asked them to be killed because they are that unqualified to do any of this. She thinks they're just there to get killed, basically, and that they should have gotten killed, which would make sense, because I said it last season that the Chanels probably should have been killed, but for some reason they weren't, and they do not belong there, and Chanel says that she will be sure to pass around her concerns with Munsch, and Ingrid tells her if they mess with her, she will eat them for lunch. You can clearly tell that Ingrid does take this seriously. They're really not. They're just thinking this as, a job or whatever, and she really wants nothing to do with them. And again, I like that we have this figure here that really is not a fan of the Chanels. We didn't really have that last season, and I like that we have that here, because again, it adds to something that we didn't have last season, and I definitely do like seeing that. So Zayday has told Munsch about the way the Chanel spoke to the wear patients, and Munsch puts them on academic probation, and Chanel asks if they're still getting paid, and Munsch tells them that they were never getting paid, to obviously the outrage of them, tells them that they're just getting put through medical school, and I love it, they all screamed over this. They all thought that they were going to be paid, but of course they're just there to be put through medical school, and they're really just there, I think, because Munsch just wants them to do something, and so they don't feel like complete losers. She wants to kind of help them out with that, but I thought that was definitely funny to see. So Chanel thinks that by working at the hospital that they'll be able to get their own medical TV show. She at first is really upset because she always wanted to be this network news anchor, sort of like Diane Sawyer, which I thought was very funny to hear about. But she comes up with this idea that by working at the hospital, they'll be able to get their own medical TV show for Fox News, since her dream was to become a network news anchor. All they have to do is find the wear patient's cure before Zayday. And I like that we kind of have this, again, rivalry going on there. I think it's very funny to see, and I like seeing that Chanel hasn't changed. I don't want Chanel to change. Yes, I do want to feel bad for Chanel, but at the same time, I want to see that, sarcastic, mean-sided, bitchy side of Chanel, because Emma Roberts is just so great at playing that side of that character, and it's just a lot of fun to watch. And it wouldn't be Chanel if she didn't have that fun, snarky side to her. So, basically, they're going to try to find to get back into Munch's good graces. Chanel goes to Holt in order to obtain, information out of him, and Holt's hand tries to strangle Chanel, which was very strange, the way that he just casually did that, and then he hit his hand like that. Maybe his hand kind of has a mind of its own, I don't really know. It might be like an Evil Dead 2 situation, which I feel like that might be what's going on here, but, Holt comes to the realization that they can use testosterone, we find out, and Holt and Chanel seem like he's going to be her love interest, which is very strange, but it's not that weirder than Chad. As we know, Chad, he was someone that was a necrophilia, he was interested in necrophilia and just anything with sex whatsoever, which Chad is a recurring character this season. Sad to see he wasn't in this first episode, but I believe he's back next week, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next week, but I am looking forward to seeing this dynamic with Holt and Chanel overall. Definitely interesting to see. So Holt and Chanel then stop the procedure, and Holt explains to Catherine that her diet is boosting her testosterone. They're going to put her on a soy-based diet, which will hopefully get her estrogen to come back, and Chanel says it should make her breasts enlarge as well, starting a regimen of DHT, which will get her to lose hair naturally the way that most men do. So she gets to rub her success in Zayday's face, we see, and while no longer covered in hair, the wear patient has absolutely no hair at all. She looks like a cancer patient, and I believe that Catherine was played by Cecily Strong, because I know she was going to be in the season. It looked very much like Cecily Strong, so I think that's who that was. But the Chanel solution is actually a makeover, and it's very much like what they did with Hester. They completely make her over, they give her a wig, and it's actually a success. However, the Catherine's overjoyed with the way she looks and everything. However, they still think that being a doctor is easy. They think that they have this in the bag and that they know what they're doing. And Munsch wants Ingrid to keep intimidating the Chanels, and I like that Munsch isn't really she's kind of leading them on initially. She wants them to think that they know what they're doing and that this is easy, that they know, they think they know how to do this and that it's easy and everything, but I like that Munsch isn't really falling for it, that she's actually having, Ingrid intimidate them, and she's going to have Ingrid watch over them, and they both have plans for the Chanels. We don't know what that means, though, but I thought that was definitely interesting. So we then get the scene where number 3 and Chanel are actually very much tormenting number 5. They're talking about how they both have dates. Number 3 is taking a liking to Cassidy, which we didn't see in this episode. That's one complaint, that I don't think that number 3 had a ton to do in this episode. And Chanel, of course, has Holt. Number 5 doesn't really have anyone, and they feel that she's this terrible friend and feel that the only way to, for her to be, they feel that she should be punished and basically put her on the graveyard shift, and basically they think that this will be her way to learn how to be a better friend. So she helps Catherine into a scalding therapy bath. Now, the second they did this, I'm like, this is not going to end well. It's almost the end of the episode. I know some bad's going to happen here. The baths have a top to them, so that locks so that only their heads are shown. I'm like, oh shit, this is not going to end well. It just did not look like a good scene. So we hear a door open. I'm like, okay, it's going to be the killer. And number 5 thinks that it's just Candy Striper, but they quickly see it's not Candy Striper. They put on a record. They dance around them before chopping off the patient's head. Literally, Catherine is dead within seconds, and then the killer makes their way toward number 5. We don't know if number 5 is going to die, and that is the way the episode ends. Really good start overall, but let's get more into this episode. Like I said, I really love this first episode overall. I thought we already are off to a great start. What I really love about the ending, though, is that it's not the Red Devil. It's a new killer, and we don't know what the name of this killer is. They haven't said the name yet, but this is not the Red Devil. This is a completely different type of killer, and I like seeing that because it is essentially an anthology series with new characters, but with some of the old characters. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with that. I definitely like where a lot of this is going. Is number 5 going to die? Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she did, because like I said, I think the Chanels probably should have died last year. Number 5 is one that I was very surprised didn't die. It always seemed like number 5 was close to her demise, and for some reason they didn't kill her, and I feel like this season they're not playing around. They're going to kill off a lot of characters, and there aren't as many characters as there are last season. There are only 4 new characters, and then you have, like, Munsch, of course, the Chanels, Zayday. Hester is somewhere. We don't know where Hester is right now. I can't wait to figure out where Hester is. She's MIA. Definitely looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with that. Dr. Holt, like I said, I do not trust Holt. He seems very sketchy. He seems like there's definitely something off about him, and something is going on with his hand. I feel like his hand has a mind of its own, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with that. Him and Chanel, I don't know how I feel about them getting together, but again, I think the fact that the show is getting a little bit more outrageous, I think works for the show's benefit, because it shouldn't be a show that should ever take itself too seriously. And I think by going in some very strange directions like that, I think it works actually for the show's benefit. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with that. Hopefully we find out more about Cassidy's background, because like I said, we didn't find out much about Cassidy in this first episode, but hopefully, next episode or the episode after that, we find a lot more about Cassidy. I want to like his character. I want to like Taylor Lautner. He seems like he's very good in this role. I just want to see more of him. And then Candy Striper as well. I'm sure we'll find out more about him. Who is this killer, though? What's going on with them? How long has this killer been around? That's something I'm definitely looking forward to. I like this rivalry between Zayday and the Chanels. I like how the Chanels think that they have this beat, that they know what they're doing, and that Munch trusts them, when really we can tell that she's really there, I think, to give them a reality check and really make them see, that they're not the best thing ever, and that they're not such hot stuff even though they think they are, and that they don't know, that they really aren't realizing, what they're really getting themselves into. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with that. I like Ingrid's character as well. Hoping we find out more about Ingrid, because I really like what they're doing with her. I think she's definitely going to be a very fun character to see. I do like Zayday more this season, though. Like I said, I like that she's more assuming the role of the realistic one and the logic one. The one that is basically actually taking it seriously and actually does want to help these patients. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with that. That's definitely going to be very interesting to see what happens there. I really did like this overall. I thought, like I said, it was funnier. It just overall was a very good premiere. Really looking forward to seeing what else happens this season. Also looking forward to seeing what happens with Chad. I know Denise is going to come back into the season, so I'm assuming it's going to have to do with Chad. And we did see Denise a little bit in this first episode, but not a ton, which is fine, because as you guys know, I'm not a huge fan of that character. But already I'm enjoying this season a lot more than last year's. It just seems like they're taking themselves a lot less seriously, but they are actually getting dark. I'm not going to lie. That last scene, kind of creepy, actually. I really did not know what was going to happen there, and I don't know if they're about to kill off number 5, but if they do, that'd be very ballsy, and I really would be all for it if they do, because I really don't know what they're going to do with her this season if they don't kill her off. We'll have to see. Overall, guys, really enjoyed this premiere overall. Let me know what you guys thought of this premiere overall. I really had a lot of fun with this. I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of the season. I think it's going to be a much better season than last year. Not that last season was bad. I just feel that this season's going to be a lot better. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought of this premiere overall. How do you feel about them revamping the show? Do you like the new characters? I definitely really loved John Stamos' character of Holt. Also, what is that tattoo on his back? I also want to find out what the backstory behind that is. And that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next one, which will be for the season premiere of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.